It takes two things to make trauma. It takes a genetic predisposition and it takes an experience. And you can have two children, even from the same parents, right? So those are the most genetically alike people. They can have the same exact experience, but because of any differences in their template, you can have a completely different set of coping mechanisms, reactions. We've done an episode, on homosexuality. There's people have different wiring and different chemistry. It's going to react differently. And that's not to say that every person who's gay, if you put them in a, religious traumatic situation, we're allowed to be as different as fingerprints and snowflakes and all those things. But especially for a child who is sensitive, this is when people ask me like, well, can't I just hit my children a little bit? Here's what I say to them. You don't know what template you got. You can hope that they'll be okay and think that they deserved it and that it was for their greatest good. But it is never, ever comfortable for the person who loves and protects you to cause you fear, terror, and shame and pain. So some kids, will come out of it fine, and others will be devastated forever. So I think it's incredibly, brave of you. Also, I try and talk as much as I can, about therapy. My appointment is after I talk to you. I try and encourage that and also encourage us to be astounded by a system of healthcare that leaves this kind of mental health care to the elite and to the people. Obviously, suicide affects you no matter if you're wealthy or poor. Mental health affects you whether you're wealthy or poor. However, if resources are given preferentially, to people who can afford it, we don't have an equal system. So it's very, very, it's very brave, and I'm very grateful to you, even for sharing that you're in couples therapy. It shouldn't be something that's seen as a trend, or something for the Hollywood elite, which I consider you part of. To me, those are all the things. Like for me, that's self-care. That's part of my self-care.
It is. For us, for Jason and I, it is paramount. It helps us.
No, I think that one of the things that I was thinking also about, this concept of intergenerational trauma, which, I think we're speaking the same language essentially, is that there are certain things that can make us sick even if we don't have them. And that's usually like alcoholism is usually described like that. It's the disease that you can get even if you're not drinking, right? Because it affects the family. It affects the spouse. It affects the kids. It affects the whole system. So for example, and I don't know and don't need to know necessarily specifics more about your family, but just what you talked about, if your mother was in a relationship that was painful and that was traumatic, even for her, even if you didn't even witness that, even if you, lived in Antarctica while your mother had that relationship, she now carries that. And it's in everything she does. It lives in her. It's a thing. And I can say just from my experience, like my poor children, I've done as right by them as I could. But I know that they are carrying the Holocaust because that's what I was carrying, because that's what my mother was carrying, because that's what my grandparents were carrying, right? And then there's thousands and thousands of years that we get to play this game. And depending on how deep and spiritual, mystical, because I get out there too, this is why people do past life regressions and they talk about ancestral pain. And it's like, what is that? This is this notion, and it's very out there, but the most practical application of it is exactly what I said. Whatever your parents go through, whatever your caregivers go through, it lives in you. And if they were, quote, untreated, or they didn't get the help that they needed for the situation they were in, it's not even rocket science. It's like literally brain science. It's just like you get it by extension.
There's a lot of religious stuff too. Growing up in Mississippi as a child, like Southern Baptist, I was in a play called Heaven's Gates and Hell's Flames when I was 7.
Oh, yeah.
Just
simple. I know what side of that you and I were on, Jonathan. Do you want to talk a little bit? Because also, I do happen to be a person, a reasonable person or a sciencey person of faith. But there is a lot surrounding, and again, the problem is not so much God or religion, it's humans. But but many people find also a lot of, I'm not diagnosing you, but there's, because you haven't indicated anything around this, but a lot of obsessions and compulsions can actually come up surrounding religion in particular and religious training. So I'm not saying that was your experience, but I do want to acknowledge that while religion does many positive things, there's also a structure and an implementation by even well-meaning people that can be very upsetting, especially, I like to talk about like, well, we're so resilient and most people are like fundamentally the same, meaning in terms of like our makeup. But the fact is you don't know what kid you're getting. I always point this out to people, especially when the subject of hitting comes up. You don't know what predisposition that kid has for extreme trauma from being screamed at or hit. Like, you don't know. And so hopefully they'll be okay. It's kind of how most people and a lot of people didn't even think about it, but I think the same is with religion. Like, you don't know. You could be trying to imprint on a child something that's very, very damaging to them. My older son, we sent him to camp. We sent him to a little Jewish, like a day camp. This was years ago. He's 15. He might have been 8 when this happened. He told me now that the instructor said that think of yourself when you go to sleep like a cell phone that needs to be charged. And sometimes God will unplug your charger and you won't wake up. Now, I was like, I'm sorry, he told you what? And this happened like 7 years ago, and I never knew this. And it turned him off to that particular branch of religious observance.
Yeah,
because he's like, Mama, it wasn't, and he told me this last week. It wasn't even that like they said that sometimes God forgets, because like, whoops. It was that God makes a conscious decision
just unplug it,
to not plug me in or to unplug me. Like, I'm thinking Matrix.
Your mother told a story recently on an episode that we released about her belief that God was standing behind her door in her bedroom every night and watching her, and she was terrifying.
My God.
So tell us your religious trauma. Let's play this game.
Oh, fuck. Well, first of all, this is a game that me and my friends play all the time. We grew up in the South, so it's Bible Belt. I was from Mississippi. It was already, if this tells you anything, like moving to Nashville was culture shock for my mom and I. We were like, oh my God, contemporary Christian music. What is this? And I honestly, it will be a forever thing that I will be untying some of the knots. But I mean, only recently did I remember this play that I told you guys about. This was like an evangelical play that toured around, I'm sure, the southeastern region.
We know it.
Of
Mayim
America.
and I reenact that play all the time.
Our relationship is that play.
Oh my God. Well, wow. It was there was a scene where I was, with my mom. My real mom was in this with me, and we were like, la-di-da, we're walking across the stage, which is in this case supposed to be just like a street. We're innocently crossing the street, probably jaywalking. It's probably why we died. But
God hates a jaywalk.
We got hit.
Hold on, this is getting good.
And so someone hit us. We die, and I go to heaven up a very real set of stairs that are so steep and so. It was very tough for my little legs, but I made it to heaven. And then
you did.
My mom was quite literally dragged to hell by a Luciferian looking, very cheaply, made Satan.
Because her legs weren't strong enough,
and,
or were there other reasons?
No, there was the drama. I mean, that was the drama of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was just talking to a friend about this the other day, and they were like, "Oh my God, I saw that play," and I was like, "You saw my mom go to hell?" It was very. But at the time, I was a kid, and everyone in that church thought we're doing the right thing, And I don't know. I mean, there's no better example of preaching to the choir in history than that right there, but. I quickly, when I moved here to Nashville, I met the guys that I play in a band with at a church school, homeschool thing. It was so, We were made fun of so badly in the press when we were kids because, like, you know, the first time we went to England, they were like, what the fuck? Like, where are you guys, aliens from? Like, you guys are crazy. And, you know, and I was pretty, like, unabashed. Like, I was okay. I wasn't super strict within myself and what I thought about God, but I will say so much trauma happened without without me knowing. And then especially to my guy friends, you know, because I'm in a band with all dudes. So it's like I hear their stories and it's pretty bad. Like I feel like, I mean, first of all, like being a young girl in a youth group at the time, maybe it's different now, but it's like the boys got like the sex talk and the porn talk and all of that stuff. And the girls, like, it's just, you're not even a sexual being, you know, you're just a bait, you know? And that's how I was made to feel. It was like almost I was weaponized, you know, and I think that was probably a small layer of me making myself smaller and trying to fit in with the guys and just be one of the guys all the time, you know.
Does religion play any supportive role in your life? Obviously, there's, you know, aspects of spirituality which sort of cross into religion, and curious how that lands for you now.
I would say, you know, maybe very loosely. I am still figuring out just how deep some of the cuts are that, you know, that the wounds that, like I'm still figuring it out. I don't know what I believe. I'm comfortable with that right now. Doesn't mean I will always be. And I know there's something. I know there's God, but maybe just not God that I was taught.